Your idea needs to adhere to language and other policies mandated by the FCC. These projects also need to be non-commercial in nature. Interested? Just visit kpft.org and click on the Propose a Show tab towards the bottom of our front page. Multilingual programming is also welcome. Again, just visit kpft.org for details. This is 90.1 KPFT Houston.
Hello, Houston. Live from the KPFT studios on Lovett Boulevard, it's the Houston Hour with Houston historian and TV's Mister McKinney and Paper City Magazine's executive editor, visual arts and features, Catherine Anspon. Now, sit back and relax as we bring you an hour of all things arts, entertainment, history, and Houston happenings. Here's Mister McKinney.
Hello, Houston. Here we are, another episode of the Houston Hour. Thank you so much for tuning in to KPFT 90.1 and listening to our show. I know many of y'all enjoy what we do here, and you've actually been sending us emails and letters, and we do appreciate it because that kind of feedback matters to us. And you can always get a hold of us at thehoustonour@gmail.com. It's simple as that, thehoustonour@gmail.com, or send us a text message, 713-364-8674, 713-364-8674. Any guests that you might want to have in the new year, 2021, who would you like to have on the show? Let us know. Drop us a line. We'd be happy to entertain that idea. Well, I'm, of course, sitting next to my amazing special guest co-host. You've been hearing for the last couple of months on the KPFT airwaves, Dr. Christelle Bastida. Say hello.
Hey, Houston.
There she is. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, hey, we've been doing this for a couple of months now. We've been having these great, snippets of audio that you've been able to hear and listen to some of the artists in an amazing exhibit that takes place in the University of Houston. I'm, of course, talking about
Color Field. So today we're going to be speaking with Maria Gaztambide. And she's the director and chief curator of public art for the U of H system. So she has a lot of work to do because she has so many different campuses to, curate art for. And yeah, so that's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, no, it really is, and she's going to tell us about this too. This opportunity for the public to be able to go and be engaged in public art, and I think just with a very challenging 2020, we need more art in this world, more happiness, more positive energy, and art does that. It makes us think, it makes us feel, and it's a good thing. So we're looking forward to having Dr. Maria Gaztambide back on the show because she was on last year for our very first season. And then speaking of guests on the show and history guests, we have with us Sarah Haynes Westcott, and she's going to talk about Sarah Westcott Haynes, rather, actually. She's going to talk about what her family, really the Westcott family, and also who's been in Houston for centuries, decades, and she'll talk about this family cemetery that exists in the Jensen area. And this is the north side of Houston. For those not familiar with this part, it's not too far from you, Dr. Rochelle.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm excited to speak with her about it. And what I really, in particular, like about her is just how well she's worked with the community, and her just kind of bringing this history forward, and taking care of a place that previously hadn't really been taken care of. So
yeah,
very exciting.
Yeah, she was in the Chronicle last year. It was a whole spread, a full-page article about just this very neglected, exactly what you're talking about, Dr. Christelle, this neglected cemetery in the north side that people really didn't care about or even care to care about. And, it's, of course, her family's buried there. She's members' descendants buried there. But even just beyond that, a cemetery, like it was in the old days, could be a gathering space for people. It's an outdoor space, has typically beautiful statuary and monuments, and typically well-maintained out of respect for the folks that have passed away. So it's a park. And they've been parks throughout our history. I mean, we do our show here at Sam Houston Park, at 1100 Bagby in the heart of downtown Houston. And Sam Houston Park, although it is a municipal park founded back in 1899, it actually has ties to cemeteries that were also here. So, people, and even Glenwood Cemetery, 1871, and Hollywood Cemetery, not too far from you,
I have a lot of family members there, yep.
It's a beautiful cemetery. Julie Idison's buried there and some other important Houstonians. It's just charming, and to be able to walk around in those spaces. So cemeteries are relevant. They have, an important need when it comes to just an emotional connection and closure, but also when it comes to learning about history, because these are the pioneers, the folks that paved the way for all of us, that are here in Houston. So we're looking forward to having Sarah Westcott Hayes on the show. Well, it's almost done, our little anniversary celebration in regards to what we do on the Houston History Bus and Mr. McKinney's Historic Houston. And this is the last Thursday in January, so we kind of focus on reflecting back on that. And I keep telling you guys, tune in, because February, we're going to have some really, really special opportunities on board the bus. Okay, here we go. You're going to be the first people to hear about this. February 13th and 14th and February 20th and 21st are the dates that we're going to be offering these free tours. These free tours on board the Houston History Bus, where you're going to learn about Houston history. So we're excited to be able to offer those. There's going to be sign-up information coming up the first week of February. We're going to launch, okay? So you guys get the sneak peek here. So in a couple days, we're going to launch it on MrMcKinney.com. You can sign up. You can pick your date, pick your time, and be able to come join us on board the Houston History Bus. So think about that. Well, we probably should just dive right in, because these two guests that we have today, I'm sure, are going to take up, some amazing airwave time, because they're going to talk about what they do and why they're passionate. So we're looking forward to talking to Dr. Maria Gaztambide, and we'll probably just take it away.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. So our arts guest for today is Dr. Maria Gaztambide. She is the inaugural director and chief curator of public art of the U of H system. Say hello to Houston.
Hi, Houston.
And she's no stranger to the show, because she was actually on the show almost a year ago, I think, if not even. And just great response from that show that we had. And it's such an honor to have you back. And you've got something really special you're going to talk to us a little later on about. And those folks who've been listening to our show know exactly what I'm talking about, because they've been hearing those promos we've been running to really get people excited about something really special and unique that's happening on the systems campus.
So definitely. I know you want to talk about it later, but I'm too excited, Mr. McKinney. Can we get into it?
Sure.
I would love to talk about the color field art exhibit that you have at U of H. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Right. So it's a show that opened back in October, and it features work by 7 contemporary artists who all address color through a variety of different approaches. And we've got art for everyone, really approachable work to work that has stronger social political commentary. So it's across the board a great show for every part of every Houstonian.
That's so interesting. And tell us more about your role at U of H.
Of course, I essentially run an arts organization that has that spans the entire University of Houston system. So from the University of Houston, of course, the UH Downtown, UH Clear Lake, and also Victoria. And we are engaged in a number of activities. We run community programs. We do research, we do publications, and we use our extensive collection as the platform for all of these activities.
That's amazing. So you've done a lot at U of H. It sounds like all of the campuses have work that you've curated into the system. Is that right?
Well, our collection actually was 50 years old in 2019. And you're right, all of our campuses do have work on view.
That's amazing. Okay, and this isn't the only place that you have helped to bring art to the forefront, right?
No, I actually have been in Houston for nearly 15 years. I spent the first 13 years of my time here at the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston.
And you wore a lot of hats there.
Yeah, so I was the associate director for the International Center for the Arts of the America, which is a research center that has helped over the years to position Latin American and Latino art in the forefront. And like I said, I did that for 13 years before transitioning over to the UH system.
And tell us, what's special about Latino arts? Because I actually am very into Latino arts. But you tell us, from your perspective, what's special about it and what ways can we grow?
Well, one of the things that I love about Latino art is how it has a foot on both sides. So it engages with the avant-garde art from the mainstream, but at the same time, it's really it uses sort of a local approach and a very individual approach to carry forth a message. So I really like that interplay of using the tools, techniques, and styles of the avant-garde, but then also kind of localizing that their proposals.
And why is it important for Latino art to be part of, these academic settings, would you say?
I think it's important because the history of art in our country hasn't been fully told. For the longest time, museums were institutions that represented a certain narrative. And in recent years, even though Latinos have been working to kind of break those barriers, but in recent years, it's become exceedingly clear that all institutions have to really show and display a work that is plural and reflects the diversity of our community. And I can't think of a better city to do that in Houston.
I agree. Tell us about the mural. Tell us about the mural that was made by students there.
Oh, so in the 70s, we had members of the Mexican American student, it was a student organization. They created this mural called, I think it was called En Manos de Dios. And it represented a Mexican American student. Remember, this was pre Chicano. So Mexican American student sort of positioned himself in between, which is what I was telling you a moment ago, in between the plight and the struggles of Mexicans during the Revolutionary era, and on the other side, sort of the plights and the struggles of the Mexican American community in the United States. So the student saw himself, the central protagonist of this mural, saw himself as being kind of in between both worlds and kind of drawing strength from both of those struggles equally.
And I get that. I've seen the piece, actually. So it's one of my favorite, and the artist is one of my favorite. So yeah, I, in a lot of ways, just besides art, like as a person, as a Mexican American woman, I can definitely identify with, kind of feeling maybe in between, maybe part of both, maybe feeling part of one and wanting to be more part of the other. So I get that. And I love the piece because it brings in so much of that history that is so important and easily forgotten if we don't bring this to the forefront. So.
Right.
So are there any other pieces that are your favorite?
Well, I have a number of favorites, and that's one of the beautiful things about our collection is that our first pieces were acquired or commissioned in the 60s, but we've been continuously building upon those pieces for, like I said, for the last 50 years. So you can really chart the development of art in public spaces through our collection. I have a few favorites, of course, including, for example, there's a beautiful work by Carlos Cruz Diez. He was French, Venezuelan, but based in France for over 50 years. And it's a magnificent piece. That's one of my favorites. It's called Double Physichromy, and it's from 2009. I really like, on sort of this flip side of that, I really like a piece by Alison Schatz. It's called A Moment in Time. She's an American artist working out of Brooklyn, and she uses materials that include sort of glass beads and glass filaments to capture essentially it's as if a rainstorm stopped at a given moment. And it's really beautiful. It changes with light and time, and it's really, really light. And it's a nice counterbalance to a lot of our earlier sculptures that were very heavy and think steel and large, sort of outdoor work by burly artists, right. most of the men in the beginning. So Allison's work really helps to sort of counterbalance that more masculine impulse.
I like that so much. So she takes everything heavy and then goes, bloop, I'm going to go ahead and flip this around and make it light. I love that.
But it speaks of the changing nature of public art, and so the differences in the way things were done 50 years ago versus how contemporary artists approach art in public space.
For sure. And tell us more about the intersection of art and technology, too.
So, in my previous role at the Museum of Fine Arts, I was involved in a large-scale project which recovered key critical texts and different sources for the study of Latin American and Latino art, and we used technology to kind of build upon that and share these resources through an online platform, and that really helped to consolidate the field of Latin American and Latino art, the field of study. Because one of the problems in most mainstream museums in the United States is that they don't have departments or people working in Latin American or Latino art, because back when we started 15 years ago, there weren't as many people training to be doctors and have received masters in that field of study, because it was argued then that there weren't enough archival sources or access to the materials were limited. So it was this project was very much a way of addressing that endemic need and kind of breaking that cycle. And so that's just one example, but that I've been at the forefront of incorporating technology into art and museum work since the beginning, and I constantly look for ways of doing that in my present role.
What kind of technology?
A lot of back in the day, a lot of remote work, connecting with colleagues that were geographically dispersed. We had teams in 16 cities throughout the entire hemisphere. And we developed different databases and platforms that allowed us to connect our research virtually. But now we do different things. Like at UH, we've since COVID, we shifted the way that we engage with our audiences, and we've done that with technology to a large degree.
Absolutely.
And so that's been very, very fruitful and fulfilling as well.
You know, and I had the pleasure of being there. I think it was November, or it was last. I mean, it was gosh, almost a year ago in 2019. It was, of course, a year ago, and now it's probably almost 2 years ago that we had the big launch, the 50th anniversary. What a great event, outdoors, and it was just so wonderful to be able to see a lot of these Houston families that have been with the collection since 50 years ago. I mean, I remember seeing some members of the Cullen family, for example,
Right.
that are still active, and just these amazing Houstonians that believe so heavily in the importance of what University of Houston does as a university, but also, showcasing these awesome public pieces of art. What about the way that y'all preserve these? I mean, is there a lot of maintenance involved? I mean, these are outdoor pieces for the most part, too, that get a lot of exposure to the elements. How does that work?
Well, we have, like I said, we started collecting 50 years ago. Not all of our pieces are outdoors, but even the ones indoors do require conservation. And we do have a very active conservation program because we can't just simply accumulate a collection without being good stewards of that collection. So a lot of our effort is tied to the conservation and restoration of the pieces as well. And it's funny that you should mention our anniversary, because one thing that we are being very intentional about is spreading the message that UH is not just an academic destination or an athletic destination, but it is very much a destination for art, and the art that we display on our campuses, on all of our campuses, UH system-wide, is always free, always accessible to everybody.
And how can artists connect with U of H? Artists here in Houston, ones that are up and coming, ones that are interested in having their work shown, and those that want to collaborate too. How can they connect with you?
Well, we a lot of our pieces are usually, it takes a long time for us to develop our commissions, sometimes years in the making.
Of course.
And we have different focuses for each of the universities within the system. I can, for example, talk about maybe UHD, because of all the 4 different universities, UHD has the strongest presence of local artists. And it's just a theme that has developed organically at that university. But we have many of the founding fathers of Project Row Houses, for example, a large representation of very, very important and very relevant African-American artists that have played a major role in the development of the Houston art scene. We have works by Vincent Valdez, just kind of shifting over to the Latino camp. But among the African-Americans, Trenton Doyle Hancock, or Dr. John Biggers, who was an incredibly important figure, founding father of the TSU art department. And then some of his students, like Bert Samples, for example, or Floyd Newsome, not one of his students, but definitely very instrumental to art production in Houston through his personal work and also through his involvement at UHD. He's been a professor there for 40 years. So there is, that's one example of places, of one of our sites where really, if you want to look at Houston art, that is a place to go for inspiration and for a history lesson.
Right. How do they navigate that? I actually live in Northside, right next to the UHD campus. So say people in the community want to go into any one of these campuses and experience art. How would they do that?
Sure. So one easy way is to visit our website, which is publicartuhs.org. We've got maps and interactive maps for each of the 4 universities. And we also have art in Sugar Land, and we are expanding as well to other sites within the system. And that's the best way.
And my dad's from Victoria, Texas, and I love the fact that y'all have, that's probably, I guess, your farthest campus.
Yes. I mean, people don't believe us when we say that our artworks extend through something like, I think it's like 130 miles.
Yeah.
And we were fortunate because our last commission was unveiled at Victoria. It's a beautiful work by the Texas-based artist Margot Sawyer. She's a longtime faculty member at UT in Austin, and she did an amazing glass-based piece that, and if you're ever in Victoria, you should definitely check it out. It's beautiful.
Well, with the Nave and just different things that are happening in Victoria, like there's a lot of art that's starting to come on that scene, and we don't think of it that way, and I just love the fact that, U of H system is a part of that,
Yes.
Bringing art to a part of Texas that may not be as exposed to it, but certainly is learning to appreciate it and kind of having it more in their backyard, I think is a great, great service that y'all are doing.
And I mentioned a moment ago that the focus of our downtown of UHD is Houston-based art. So we are really working with the folks at UH in Victoria to complement the works that exist in that location, and we are focusing our efforts on Texas-based and regional artists.
And here's a fun question for people maybe listening. How does one artist get to be part of y'all's collection?
Well, that is very difficult because,
Yes.
like I said before, our commissions are sometimes years in the making, so we move at a very slow pace because of that, especially as we consider significant commissions. But I would say that we don't. Our process is sort of, it's pseudo competitive in the sense that we bring in artists maybe the stakeholders at the university level or the curators at that I oversee would be interested in working with. But then we open that process up to a number of stakeholders within the system. We have a committee that oversees that process, and it includes faculty, students, and members of the community. So even if an artist wanted to work with us, or even if we wanted to work with a specific artist, there's plenty of opportunities for feedback and discussion among this committee.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of these, as the campus is continue to grow, for example, I mean the Sugar Land one, and then you have ones out at U of H downtown. We keep mentioning that, of course, but like they got that brand new building about 6 months ago, so they opened it up, or 9 months ago. Now they have more space. Are y'all? I mean, I guess are y'all part of that design process when they look at a building and they're saying, okay, we're going to make this massive staircase here. We want some public art in this staircase that's visible, and a massive piece of art. Are y'all part of that conversation?
So we work with each of the universities within the system has a campus master planning committee. So we work with those committees, and we make sure to earmark certain spaces across all of these different universities for art. And to the extent that those spaces, remember, we have indoor work, but we also have outdoor work. And to the extent that those spaces include art, then yes, absolutely, we work with the architects and the artists and make sure that art is contemplated from the very beginning.
Now, tell us real quick, because I know people are really excited to learn more about Colorfield, and then really specifically some of the fun artists that we have, that you're going to be featuring throughout these next couple of months.
Yes, so Colorfield, like I said, in my mind, it's probably the largest exhibition of outdoor sculpture that has ever been presented in Houston. It features 13 works, and of course, some of these works have multiple elements. So it's something like, I want to say maybe 30 or 50 pieces of individual elements. So it's very significant work made by 7 contemporary artists working in a variety of different mediums. And it is work that is inspired by the Colorfield movement, which was a movement in painting that emerged in the 50s, mostly in New York. And so over time, artists who were interested in painting with color slowly began to liberate painting from the surface of the canvas and slowly encroached upon sculpture. So this is kind of the culmination of that process. These artists range in approaches. They have there's some installations. There's some works that look very much like sculptures. There's some are interactive. Some are playful. Some are more heavy in terms of the politics that they address. But the common thread is color. Is using color towards a variety of different means.
And art can be political sometimes. I mean, you have a university, which I always feel like universities are kind of this incubator, this place for thought and for expression. And like, do you ever have the system or the chancellor saying sometimes, well, you can't have that in here? How much freedom do y'all have to be able to put something that you want on these campuses?
I would say we have a tremendous amount of freedom. Of course, every time because our commissions are so long to produce, there's always I don't want to say pushback, but there's always feedback, and there's always conversation about these works. So just from the very moment that we select a piece, there's always a kind of a vetting process because, like I said, we never work alone. We always bring in the stakeholders for the college or for the department or the building or the university that we're working with. So there's a number of people that contribute to that decision-making process.
So there's a dialogue.
Very much.
And then when it comes to funding, I mean, are y'all constantly out there trying to find ways for people to contribute specifically to your efforts, or how does that work out? Is there money allocated for this every year?
So we have a permanent collection of works, and that work is funded through a % for art allocation. The University of Houston was the first. The University of Houston began to think about having art on campus in the 60s, and through the foresight of members of the Board of Regents and some faculty members back in the 60s, they got together around the idea of bringing art to UH students through a % for art program. But it wasn't until 1969 that the Board of Regents, that Texas legislation passed the necessary framework to enable this program to take shape. And what it is basically for every time there's a new construction in the university, and this is across the system, a certain percentage of new construction and certain percentage of renovations are dedicated towards the purchase of art for the campus. That is for the permanent collection. Colorfield is part of our temporary program, and that is made possible through a generous gift of the Brown Foundation. So we have a balance of % for art funds and grant money.
Wonderful. And again, we come back to some of those names we talked about earlier. You've got, Georgia Herman Brown, for example, Brian and Ruth, the Brown Foundation, that's very big in the arts here in Houston, and just these amazing benefactors that want to see, the world a better place by through art. So
what inspires you on a daily basis? It sounds like you've got just this huge reach as far as art here in Houston and at U of H, but what inspires you on a daily basis?
Well, I think I am inspired by making art a part of everybody's lives, and I feel like I can really do this from the public art side, because we have all of this work always available, and like I said, always free. And sometimes when people may want to appreciate art inside of a gallery or a museum or even someone's home, there's always sort of that barrier because they may not know how to behave in these sort of temples of high art, and public art kind of breaks that, because public art provides a direct and sort of visceral access to these works, and it's always you and the work. There's no mediation, no impediment for your full enjoyment, and I find that immensely gratifying.
And what do you think about tagging and people who make art on walls around the city? I know, of course, you have to be familiar with Be Someone, right? There's that kind of push and pull here in Houston, and I know when I was growing up, I saw a lot of these murals and a lot of this art, and I would think to myself, okay, this doesn't really reach into other spaces, but what is it? And, what is the meaning and significance of that to our city? So what are your thoughts?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that Houston has an amazing street art movement, and
absolutely
beautiful work by immensely talented artists. And for me, depending on the structure, of course, or the surface upon which these works are painted, they're really a testament to the sort of the living history of the city, the kind of the beating heart of the city. And so I like it.
I do too. I adore it. And there are so many great muralists here in Houston. And what's your favorite mural in Houston?
My favorite mural.
That's a hard one.
It is. There are so many.
I like the one that the kind of mirroring the hands of God.
Yeah, Mr. D.
Mr. D, exactly.
Yeah.
Sebastian Beaulieu, I think.
French.
Yes.
Oh, that's a great one. And
that's what I think
that's the
too.
second largest now, because the ballerinas that are over, of course, on Bell Street and Louisiana Street, I think is the largest. I don't know. We got to do some, I think by square footage. Who knows?
Got to measure that out.
But that's a great one, though. That really is. He's very talented. And I just love the fact that it's so visible. We like visible public art in places that can inspire people on a daily basis. Well, thank you so much.
You're very
Dr.
welcome.
Maria Gaztambide, for being once again on the Houston Hour. We're going to stay tuned to you for all the great things that you're going to be having coming our way. And make sure people do do tune in, because every single month from now until May, we're going to be featuring some of these amazing artists that Dr. Maria is going to be actually introducing to you on our KPFT airwaves through a partnership with y'all. So thank you again for joining us.
You're very welcome, and I'm hoping to see as many people as possible on our campus taking a look at not only Colorfield, but the works on our permanent collection, which are fantastic.
Awesome. Well, we're going to break for some messages right now and come back with more of the Houston Hour on 90.1 KPFT.